I've got a problem. I get restless. Some people say I have a short attention span, that I like to chase shiny objects. That's fair. But what if restlessness is not a problem at all, but rather a light on the dashboard of your life telling you that it's time for a change? So how do you recognize restlessness? Do you ever have that gnawing sense that what has seemed so right for so long now feels so dead, so unfulfilling, lacking in purpose and meaning? Do you ever wake up in the middle of the night imagining ways to get fired? Or dreaming about writing a novel, not a spreadsheet? You know what I'm talking about, right? Restlessness most often comes at me like a sharp elbow to the ribs. It says something like, hey, pay attention here. You might want to course correct. When I feel that nudge, it's like a wake-up call. It's like fate or my gut or God stepping in. And I don't know if it's indigestion or divine, but I do know that it's undeniably determined. I want to tell you a couple of stories today about when that elbow has prodded me into career moves that I never saw coming. A music career, working with Amy Grant, Alice Cooper, Jim Henson, and even Prince. And then a sharp left turn into starting a nonprofit that's given away 150,000 bicycles. So, hey, Bobby, welcome to your guitar lesson. What song do you want to hear today? What do you want to learn? Yes, I know that song. So it started out in an 8-by-8-foot unventilated practice room in a music store. I was halfway through my college degree, completely out of money, so I decided to take a year off, get a job. I got a job giving guitar lessons, as it turned out, to junior high boys who only wanted to learn how to play Smoke on the Water. 55 lessons a week. Week after week, I heard, yeah, I think I felt the elbow after week 1, but after 9 months, she was almost breaking my ribs. I gave in. I quit. So now I had 3 months left before I was going to go back to finish my college degree. And I was going, okay, 3 months, what can I do? What can I do with those 3 months? By the way, a degree in music education that I was pretty sure I didn't want to do. I mean, God bless you music educators out there, but I was imagining myself, leading this ragtag bunch of high schoolers through a small town summer parade, marching band, 95 degrees, smelly wool uniforms, trying to get them to differentiate their left from their right. And I was like, Luckily, that's when the elbow stepped in. And she said, hey, put Smoke on the Water to bed, baby. You could be a jingle writer. And I was like, a what? That's when I remembered my very first day of music theory class. Our professor walked in and said, welcome, you musical illiterates. Your assignment, go back to your dorm room, write a jingle about milk, come back tomorrow and perform it for the class. You're dismissed. So here I am 3 years later wondering, could I be a jingle writer? I put on my outdated sport coat that I had purchased at Chess King, and I started walking into Minneapolis ad agencies, and I announced, hey, I'd like to be your new jingle writer. You can guess what their first question was. What jingles have you done? And I said, well, I did this milk commercial for music theory class. They were thoroughly unimpressed. So, I hit a few more ad agencies. I got the same reaction. I decided to move to phase 2 of my plan. I got out a legal pad. I sat down in front of the radio, and for 3 hours, I listed every jingle I heard that sucked. Then I prioritized them, The number one bad jingle on my list, Menards. Let's all sing it together, should we? Save big money at Menards. Yeah, it was the same jingle 40 years ago. I called them and said, hey, I think your jingle could use a little help. They were insulted beyond measure. They thought their jingle was killing. And you know what? Maybe they were right, because it's still playing 40 years later. I went on down my legal pad list, and I got the same, what have you done, milk, I moved to phase 3 of my plan. I went out and bought a new sport coat at Chess King, and I got in my rusted out Chevy Malibu and I drove to Rochester, Minnesota. I figured they didn't have any ad agencies down there at the time. Plus, I had a new plan. Now, I walked into random businesses and I offered this deal. Today only, I'm offering to write a jingle for your company. I'll go back to Minneapolis. I'll hire the best musicians I know, my college friends. I'll rent a recording studio. I had never been in a recording studio. And I'll write a jingle for you. I'll come back and play it for you next week. The only thing I ask is that if I play it for you and you love it, you'll negotiate a price with me. I got 3 businesses to agree to that legally loophole deal. And I went, recorded, came back the next week, I played it for them, sold all 3. I know. So for the next 2 months, I shuttled back and forth to Rochester, writing, recording, and I made more money in those 2 months than I did the previous 9 months listening to musically unrecognizable versions of Smoke on the Water. That fall, I went back to school, I got my degree, I married the love of my life. We moved to Rochester, Minnesota. After being there for 8 months, the alarm clock radio went off one morning and there were 3 of my jingles in a row. And I rolled over in bed and said, baby, we're moving back to the big city. Now I walked into Minneapolis ad agencies with no mention of my milk masterpiece, and I started getting hired to do jingles for McDonald's and Pepsi and Harleys and Hondas, and a Target Christmas campaign with Amy Grant. That's me. My hair was darker back then. An Alice Cooper thing with Sam Goody. I got to do some Sesame Street music with Jim Henson. I even got to mix one of my tunes with Prince. He didn't allow a picture. A 25-year unlikely music career that started with a nudge from an elbow. Hey, you could be a jingle writer. So when those moments have happened to you, what do? I think the worst thing you can do is nothing, to sit down at the fork in the road and have a picnic. I think we do that because this path looks a little scary, this path looks a little unpredictable, and we're stuck in the middle going, what if I make the wrong choice? I think the worst choice is the picnic, doing nothing. You see, the elbow often encourages me to step out, to take a risk, to try something new. She says things like, what do you love? What energizes you? What makes you go, man, I want to do that again? What does she whisper in your ear? So the elbow brought me to my music career, and then she took me away. Here's a story. I'm sitting in my recording studio, ad agency calls, hey, Terry, can you write a jingle for a product called Inhibitor Bolus? Does anybody know what that is? I didn't either. Inhibitor Bolus is a big pill that a farmer forces a cow to swallow. It goes through the cow system, and when the cow deposits its pie in the pasture, the cow pie is laced with a chemical that inhibits the reproduction of flies. So they were paying me to write a jingle about a product that kills flies in cow pies. I refer to this as my first epiphany. And yes, at that very moment, I felt the sharp, uncompromising jab of the elbow. Hey, Terry, is this the whole story of your life that you want to tell? Aren't you curious if there might be another chapter, minus cow pies and kitty litter? I started to feel like I was lacking purpose. And without purpose, I'm always restless. Luckily, that's when my friend, the sentient elbow, came after me again, said, hey, Terry, what would you think about becoming a bicycle philanthropist? And I was like, a what? So here's the story. I'm a bikeaholic. How do I know? My bicycle costs more than my car. It weighs less than my 4-month-old grandson. When I was 10, I got a paper route because I got paid to ride my bike. When I was 12, my brother and I would build ramps, and we'd collect neighborhood kids and have them lie down in the street, and we'd see how many we could jump over. We usually made it. When I was 16, my buddy and I rode our bicycles to the West Coast and back. Then I started bike racing. I have a metal plate and 9 screws in my shoulder to prove it. I started a cycling club called Roadkill. Probably should have worked on that name a little longer. Then one day, a friend called me and said, hey, Terry, there's this kid in our neighborhood, doesn't have a bike, parents can't afford one, Christmas is just around the corner. Do you think you could help? So I got my Roadkill buddies together and said, hey, what if we collect bikes this December? We'll fix them up and we'll give them away to under-resourced kids. Sounds like fun. Nice little hobby. So we did. And in 2 weeks, we collected 250 bikes. We fixed them up, gave them away, and we said, that was fun. Let's do it again next year. So we did. 750 bikes. And the next year, 1,500 bikes. That's when I said, this doesn't feel like a hobby anymore. What if we form a nonprofit, put together a board of directors? I'll go find a corporate sponsor. We did, and that year we gave away 5,000 bikes. And free bikes. And Free Bikes for Kids was born. Now that little hobby that started in my garage is almost 15 years old. We're in 22 cities. We've given away over 150,000 bicycles. We hold the Guinness World Record. That's me in front of 10,000 bikes that were collected right here in Minneapolis in one day. So now we have this big, hairy, audacious goal of being in 100 cities and giving away 1 million bikes by the year 2030. And I think we might be able to do it. By the way, a major US retailer has just agreed to give us their returned bikes, 30,000 to 40,000 bikes every year. So, and yes, I had accidentally become a bicycle philanthropist. So when you have those moments, what do you do? I think it's like reading the first paragraph of a novel. You know, there's a long, meandering, and adventurous story on the following pages. But if you ignore the feeling, the nudge, and never turn to page 2, 3, or 4, well, the story never gets told. It never gets lived. When you feel the nudge, you have to turn the page. Last year, that pesky elbow came after me again. Hey, Terry, what would you think about becoming a guitar philanthropist? So we launched free guitars for kids, and now we're partnering with Gibson and Fender, and we're giving guitars away all across the country. I have a 2-part dream. Someday, a young man is going to be standing on the top podium step of the Tour de France and say, when I was invisible, a stranger saw me and gave me my first bicycle. And someday, a young woman is going to be standing on the stage accepting her Grammy Award and say, "When I was invisible, a stranger saw me and gave me my first guitar. On that day, I'm going to be wearing a big old grin, grateful for a restless spirit, for eyes that are learning to see the invisible, for tender ribs, and for that relentless elbow that says, hey, Terry, here's an idea. What do you think? Want to go for it?" Have you felt the nudge? Has the elbow come after you? Are you feeling it right now? If you are, consider yourself lucky. Fate or your gut or God are trying to tell you something. Make friends with restlessness. I think she's got a grand adventure waiting for you. Trust me, you do not want to miss this ride. Thank you.